The modern man has been lied to. He has been told that to keep a woman, he must show her that he needs her above all else, that his value lies in his ability to endlessly prove his devotion, that the more he orbits her, the more she will love him. But this is a lie built to enslave, not to empower. Friedrich Nietzsche understood something most men today cannot even fathom, that the greatest magnet for desire is the man who can walk away without flinching, whose existence is not contingent on a woman's approval. This is not indifference. This is power born from self-overflow, the paradox where the one who least needs love becomes the one most desired. And the pain that haunts men today is this: every time they believe that sacrificing their own sovereignty will secure her affection, they are digging their own grave. Nietzsche's paradox is that the man who refuses to kneel before her becomes the one she kneels before in her heart. This is the pulse of attraction hidden beneath centuries of romantic propaganda. Imagine a woman sitting across from you, testing you in ways she will never articulate. These tests are not malicious, they are primal. She is scanning for the man whose inner world is too vast to be conquered, the man who, even in the face of her beauty and charm, remains centered. Every move she makes, from subtle withdrawal to overt emotional push-pull, is designed to expose whether you are sovereign or merely a suitor begging for her light. Nietzsche would say that in love, as in life, there is no equality, there is will to power. The one who retains the stronger frame shapes the entire dynamic. And the brutal truth? Most men crumble under these tests, surrendering their will the moment they sense her slipping away. They become performers instead of conquerors, suppliers instead of storms. Our single thesis today is absolute. The modern woman, no matter what she claims, secretly craves a man who does not need her, because only he can awaken her most ancient unspoken desire to be claimed by a force greater than her ability to control. This is not about being cold, nor about playing petty games. This is about embodying the man Nietzsche described as the Bermensch, the one who creates his own law, whose existence is self-justified, whose presence is an overflowing abundance rather than a plea for validation. And when you live from this abundance, something remarkable happens. Her attempts to measure your dependency fail, and instead of pulling away, she becomes drawn in like prey to a gravitational field. Scenario 1 begins here. You meet a woman who, after a string of engaging conversations, suddenly grows distant. Her replies slow. Her tone changes. She cancels plans with a vague excuse. To most men, this is an unbearable trigger. The primitive fear of rejection activates, and they rush to compensate: more messages, more reassurances, more invitations. But what she is truly doing is setting the hidden test. Can you stand without leaning on me? This test is ancient. In evolutionary terms, a woman's survival depended on choosing a mate who could thrive independently of her nurturing, who was already victorious in the external world. A man who panicked at the smallest sign of withdrawal was signaling that his stability was tied to her mood, which in ancient times meant he was a liability under pressure. Her distancing maneuver is not random. It's a deep, instinctive probe to see if your self-possession is a mask or a fortress. If you chase, you fail. If you hold, you pass. The weak response to this is predictable and tragic. The average man floods her inbox with attention, apologizes unnecessarily, or escalates his investment in an attempt to win her back quickly. What he does not realize is that every extra message, every eager follow-up, is a confession. It is a confession that his frame has been captured, that her slight withdrawal has caused him to lose his center. The chain reaction is devastating. First, her subconscious registers him as dependent. Second, her attraction drops sharply because dependency equals vulnerability to control. Third, she begins to feel a subtle but undeniable superiority over him, which kills her erotic respect. By attempting to secure her through increased availability, he has in fact secured his place in her mind as a backup option rather than the main pursuit. Nietzsche would call this the morality of the herd, acting from fear, trying to conform to what is safe, when the only morality that seduces is the morality you create yourself. The power response, however, is an entirely different organism. When she withdraws, the Nietzschean man does not chase. He does not mirror her distance out of spite. He simply remains in his own world, unshaken. He continues his pursuits, his work, his physical discipline, his social momentum. His communication remains warm, but measured, never compensating for the space she creates. The sub-communication here is lethal in its beauty. I enjoy you, but I am already full without you. This is pre-selection at the deepest level, not because other women are visible around him, but because his life itself is the mistress he serves. It is the embodiment of Nietzsche's self-overcoming, the endless act of becoming more than he was yesterday. And it is this current that a woman feels even through silence. He is not ignoring her. He is living so completely that her absence is merely a change in background color, not the loss of the canvas. Her perception shifts almost immediately. The script she expected, where her withdrawal draws him into pursuit, has failed. This introduces cognitive dissonance, which is the seed of obsession. Instead of feeling certain about her power over him, she begins to question it. This uncertainty is intoxicating because it reactivates her instinct to win his attention, to regain influence over his center. In the long term, this changes the foundation of how she sees him. He is no longer a man orbiting her world, but a sun whose gravity she must navigate. Her respect deepens because she sees him as rare. Most men collapse under the test, and he did not. And respect, in the erotic sense, is not an intellectual agreement. It is the body's recognition that this man cannot be owned, only experienced. Scenario 2 unfolds in the heat of early connection. You are with her in a social setting, friends, laughter, music, the kind of night that hums with possibility. She leans in, laughing at your words, touching your arm lightly, letting you feel the warmth of her presence. Then, deliberately, she shifts. She begins giving more attention to another man nearby. Maybe it's a friend of yours, maybe a stranger who wandered into the conversation. She directs her smile toward him, her posture opening in his direction. This is not mere flirtation for fun. It is another hidden test, ancient in its roots. She is gauging the stability of your dominance in the social arena. For a woman, especially in times before modern security, a man's ability to hold his position among rivals was directly tied to survival. By redirecting her energy, she is asking a subconscious question. Will you crumble in the presence of competition, or does your value stand untouched? It is not the other man she is testing. It is your response to the shift in her focus. She is checking for the invisible fracture line where insecurity seeps through, because if it's there, she will feel it instantly. The weak response is almost universal. The average man feels the burn of jealousy rising and reacts in one of two ways. Either he tries to pull her back into interaction with clingy attention, or he retaliates with petty counterflirtation, aimed at making her jealous in return. Both are desperate strategies, broadcasting one thing clearly, that his value is dependent on her undivided attention. If he tries to re-engage her frantically, it exposes fear. If he turns his attention to another woman out of spite, it exposes wounded pride. Either way, his emotional stability is revealed as fragile. The subconscious message she receives is devastating to his case. If I can shift his mood and actions this easily, then his self-possession is conditional, not real. Nietzsche would see this as the slave morality in action, the reactive man defining himself through the movements of others, rather than creating his own rhythm. And when she senses reactivity instead of sovereignty, her arousal cools, because attraction at its core is drawn to what cannot be shaken. The power response in this setting is pure frame control. When she redirects her attention, the Nietzschean man's energy does not tighten or retreat. He remains exactly as he is engaged with the room, grounded in conversation, radiating the same presence whether she is facing him or not. If another man receives her attention, it does not disturb his state, because his state is not contingent on being the sole recipient of her interest. In fact, he may subtly expand his social dominance by deepening his engagement with others in the room, not out of compensation, but because his natural energy is generative, spilling over into the environment. The subcommunication here is surgical. I am the center of my own gravity, and this space belongs to me. This triggers a primal recognition in her that she is in the company of a man who will not be dethroned by the entry of another male presence. Nietzsche's ideal of the creator applies here. The man is not competing in her frame. He is the architect of the frame in which all others move. The shift in her perception comes swiftly. The script she deployed was meant to provoke a chase or a reaction, but instead she encounters immovability. This unnerves her because it denies her the familiar power dynamic. Instead of being reassured of her ability to manipulate the tempo of the interaction, she finds herself re-evaluating her own position in relation to him. Attraction sharpens because the unknown is now present. She does not fully understand the limits of his self-control, nor the true depth of his value. The other man in this scenario becomes irrelevant. He was only ever a tool for the test. Now, the test has failed, and she must face the intoxicating reality that she might not hold the same sway over him as she assumed. Long term, this changes her pursuit instincts rather than relaxing in certainty. She becomes subtly driven to regain a sense of influence, which draws her deeper into his orbit. In her mind, he becomes the social alpha whose position is beyond contest, and that perception once embedded is nearly impossible to dislodge. Scenario 3 takes us into a different terrain. You are in a private, intimate conversation, and she begins to share something emotionally charged, a past relationship betrayal, a career disappointment, a moment of self-doubt. At first, it seems like vulnerability, but hidden inside is another probe. Will you lose yourself in my emotional world, or can you remain the anchor? This is the hidden test of emotional sovereignty. In evolutionary terms, a man's value was not only in his ability to defend physically, but in his ability to remain rational under emotional stress. A partner who collapses into over-identification with her pain would be useless in moments of crisis. She is checking for the ability to empathize without drowning, to connect without abandoning one's own center. The weak response here is emotional over-involvement. The average man, eager to prove his care, becomes swept up in her emotional state, mirroring her intensity, overpromising solutions, or even becoming visibly distressed on her behalf. Though it feels to him like deep connection, what she actually perceives is a lack of resilience. He has been pulled into her frame, losing the ability to steer the emotional climate. This signals that in the face of emotional turbulence, he would be a passenger, not the captain. Nietzsche would call this the decay of will, the surrender of one as guiding principle to the tides of another's mood. The erosion of attraction here is subtle but decisive. If she senses she can pull him off course with her emotions, she knows the world can too, which makes him a risk. The power response is grounded empathy. The Nietzschean man listens fully, gives her space to express, but does not mirror the volatility. His voice stays measured, his breathing steady, his body language open but anchored. He does not rush to fix. He does not drown in sympathy. Instead, he offers perspective that rises above the drama without invalidating her feelings. This demonstrates mastery over his own state, a refusal to be ruled by external storms. Subcommunicated beneath every word is the message: I am here with you, but I am not lost in you. This is the emotional equivalent of unshakable frame control, and it resonates with the Nietzschean ideal of self-overcoming, where even empathy is guided by strength, not submission. Her perception shifts in a profound way. In the moment, she feels both seen and held, not just emotionally, but energetically. She realizes that she can bring her storms to him without fear of capsizing the ship, and this plants the seed of deep trust. In the long term, her attraction transforms from surface-level curiosity to something richer, magnetic pull toward the stability she instinctively knows she cannot find in most men. The awareness that he will not lose himself in her chaos makes him the rare figure she can lean into without fearing that he will collapse under the weight. This is not just sexual magnetism, it is the blueprint for long-term enthrallment. Scenario 4 takes place not in moments of tension or withdrawal, but in the moments when she is at her most alluring. You are in her apartment after an evening together. The lighting is low, music hums faintly, the air between you charged with the unspoken. She leans closer, her scent wrapping around you, her gaze lingering just a beat longer than usual. Everything in her body language says she is inviting escalation. But beneath this invitation is the hidden test of sexual self-command. This is where she silently asks, "Are you so overcome by me that you will surrender instantly? Or are you the kind of man who can hold back desire because you control it, not the other way around?" In evolutionary psychology, this traces back to the selection of mates who were not ruled by impulse men capable of strategic patience in courtship were also those capable of restraint and long-term provision. A man who lunges at the first signal betrays a lack of mastery over himself, and that lack will echo far beyond the bedroom. The weak response here is eager compliance. Most men, intoxicated by the moment, take her signals as the green light to escalate without any awareness of the deeper game. They become fully absorbed in chasing immediate gratification, their behavior shifting from grounded to urgent. In that urgency, they betray that their sexual appetite is easily controlled from the outside, that she, merely by leaning closer, can command his actions. She may still go along with it physically, but in the deep subconscious ledger where attraction is truly recorded, a note is made. His desire owns him more than he owns it. Nietzsche would see this as enslavement to impulse, the opposite of the self-mastered Bermensch. The man who cannot delay is the man who will always be led by forces greater than himself, whether those forces are lust, fear, or the will of others. The power response here is intoxicating in its restraint. The Nietzschean man receives her signals fully. He allows the tension to build, maintains eye contact, perhaps touches her in a way that acknowledges the moment, but he does not rush to close the physical distance. He allows the desire to expand between them like a coiled spring, knowing that anticipation is a weapon as potent as action. This is not a withholding born of insecurity. It is a deliberate act of dominance over himself, and by extension, the situation. The subcommunication is layered. I desire you, but I am not ruled by desire. One choose the moment. This flips the test entirely, rather than her controlling the tempo. She realizes he is the one setting it, and that realization is electrically arousing. Nietzsche's vision of the higher man, the one who imposes form upon chaos, comes alive here. The shift in her perception is immediate and powerful. Instead of feeling like she has seduced him fully, she feels herself being seduced on a timeline she does not control. This introduces a subtle but undeniable imbalance in power. She now invests more energy into pulling him closer, intensifying her own signals, chasing the escalation she assumed she could command at will. In the long term, this changes the erotic dynamic entirely. She begins to associate him not just with pleasure, but with the uniquely addictive pleasure of being led into deeper states of desire than she could have created alone. He becomes the architect of her anticipation, the sculptor of her surrender, and that role is one she will struggle to forget. Scenario 5 arrives in the aftermath, the phase most men fumble without realizing it. You have already shared intimacy, whether emotional, physical, or both. Many believe this is the point to relax, to lean into constant availability, to cement connection by increasing their presence in her life. But here lies the hidden test of post-connection independence. After the high of intimacy, she instinctively gauges whether the experience has diminished your sovereignty. Evolutionarily, This was a check on whether a man's investment was a momentary peak or part of a consistent baseline. A man who becomes clingy afterward reveals that the experience was a rare event for him, something he cannot easily replace. A man who maintains his life rhythm shows that while it mattered, it did not define him. The weak response here is attachment collapse. The average man, feeling that the connection has deepened, begins to text constantly, seeks to schedule every free moment with her, and subtly shifts his priorities to accommodate her presence. To him, this feels like dedication. To her instincts, it feels like dependency. She sees that her approval and availability now have disproportionate power over his mood and focus. Nietzsche would call this a regression into the morality of the herd, the need to merge and dissolve into the collective for comfort, when the true path of the higher man is to remain distinct, even in union. This post-intimacy cling triggers a subconscious loss of respect, because she senses that what was rare and powerful about him before is already eroding under the weight of attachment. The power response is the continuation of his path exactly as before. After intimacy, he remains warm, connected, and appreciative, but he does not disrupt his schedule, abandon his work, or dilute his focus. He does not ignore her. Ignoring is just another form of reaction, but he also does not orbit. His life retains its gravitational force, and she must align herself to it if she wishes to remain in his world. This is not coldness, it is constancy. Subcommunicated is the truth that he was complete before her and remains complete with her, and this steadiness is intoxicating. In Nietzschean terms, he has not been conquered by pleasure. He has incorporated it into his ongoing self-overcoming without losing stride. Her perception here undergoes the deepest transformation. She realizes that her presence in his life is not the axis around which his world spins. At first, this might feel disorienting most men. After intimacy, unconsciously hand her the keys to their kingdom. But as the days pass, it becomes clear to her that his independence is not a threat, but a constant source of attraction. Long term, this cements him in her mind as a man who will never beg for her to stay, precisely because he never needed her to complete him. This is the Nietzschean paradox at its highest point. His lack of need becomes the very reason she cannot imagine losing him. He remains the sun, she remains in orbit, and the gravitational pull only strengthens. The practical arsenal is not a list of tricks. It is the embodiment of a state. Every scenario we have walked through is not about isolated tactics. It is about one continuous truth. You must live in such a way that her tests cannot touch your center, because your center is not built for her approval. Nietzsche's paradox demands that you understand this at the bone level. When you are full, you are wanted. When you are needy, you are discarded. This fullness is not arrogance, not a mask, but the overflowing abundance of a man in motion towards something greater than the pursuit of any single woman. When she withdraws her attention, you do not chase, you remain still in your gravity. When she directs her energy toward another man, you do not scramble, you expand your dominance over the space. When she brings emotional storms, you do not sink, you stand as the mast that holds the sail. When she turns up the heat physically, you do not lunge, you let anticipation become a living thing between you. When intimacy is shared, you do not dissolve into her, you keep walking your path. In every case, the power response is not a performance, but an unshakable reality. You own your time, your focus, your state. She can join, but she cannot own. The weak responses all share one fatal flaw. They place her perception at the center of your being. Every message sent in panic, every jealous glance, every over-identification with her emotions, every urgent move toward physicality, every post-intimacy orbiting, these are acts of surrender disguised as care. She feels the truth beneath the gesture. And the truth is that you have ceded the frame. Nietzsche would tell you that you have fallen into the morality of the herd, where you seek comfort in being chosen rather than glory in choosing yourself. The moment she senses this, the current of desire shifts. Respect dries up. Attraction becomes an echo. The power responses, by contrast, all carry the same scent, the scent of a man who is already victorious. This is the paradox. The man who least needs her is the man she most wants, because need kills mystery, and mystery is the soil in which desire grows wild. When you live from Nietzsche's principle of self-overcoming, you are in a constant state of becoming. You are not static, you are ascending. She feels this as vitality, as a pulse of life that draws her in even when you are silent. And because you cannot be cornered or tamed, every interaction becomes a dance in which she is forever chasing your center, never quite able to pin it down. Understand that the tests will never stop. They are not signs of disrespect, but signs of life. They are the unconscious ways in which a woman checks whether your sovereignty is still intact. A man who fears the tests is already weak. A man who welcomes them is already strong. Nietzsche's man does not hide from the abyss. He builds his home on its edge. This is not a call to play games or to manipulate. This is a call to live so completely that no withdrawal, no provocation, no surge of pleasure can topple you from your own throne. And when you live this way, something inevitable happens. She invests. She invests not because you asked her to, not because you proved yourself, but because you became the rarest thing in her experience, a man whose desire is offered freely, not given as payment for validation. She feels that if she were to lose you, she would not be taking half your soul with her. She would be stepping away from a kingdom whose gates might never open for her again. That thought does not just attract, it obsesses. So here is your task. Stop thinking about how to keep her and start thinking about how to keep building yourself. The Nietzschean paradox is not a seduction trick. It is a law of human magnetism. You are most desired when you could walk away today without flinching. You are most respected when her presence is a choice, not a requirement. You are most loved when you could live without her, but choose not to. Carry this into the world, and you will see the shift. In her eyes, in her voice, in the way she begins to move around you slower, more deliberate, more careful, as if she is aware she is in the presence of something she cannot afford to lose. And when you see that shift, know that you are living the paradox. The man who does not need her has become the man she cannot live without. Now, in the next session, we go deeper. You will learn the exact conversational moves that make her feel your sovereignty without you ever speaking about it. Because it is one thing to be a man she cannot control. It's another to be the man she feels compelled to surrender to. That's where we go next.